Dawn broke cold and gray on Friday, October 13th, 1307. Across France, royal messengers had delivered sealed orders to local officials the previous evening, with explicit instructions. Open these documents at dawn and act immediately. As morning light crept across the kingdom, royal soldiers and bailiffs simultaneously descended upon Templar commanderies, preceptories, and estates. By nightfall, hundreds of Knights Templar, warrior monks who had served as Christendom's elite fighting force for nearly 2 centuries, were in chains. The arrests came with shocking accusations. The powerful order of the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar, stood accused of heresy, blasphemy, and obscene rituals. King Philip IV of France, deeply indebted to the order and coveting their vast wealth, had orchestrated the perfect trap with the reluctant blessing of Pope Clement V, a pontiff whose election Philip had engineered years earlier. What followed entered history as one of the Church's most decisive victories against heresy. Templars were tortured into confessions of spitting on the cross, denying Christ, and worshipping a mysterious idol called Baphomet. Grand Master Jacques de Molay and other Templar leaders were burned at the stake in 1314. Pope Clement dissolved the order through his papal bull Vox in Excelso in 1312. The vast Templar treasury in Paris vanished overnight. Their properties were transferred to the Knights Hospitaller. The mightiest military religious order of the medieval world appeared to crumble into dust. Yet history reveals a peculiar truth. Despite the combined might of the French crown and the Holy See, the Templars were never truly eradicated. Like a phantom limb, the order seemed to persist long after its supposed destruction. This raises a compelling question that historians and mystery seekers have pondered for centuries. Why did the Templars seem to vanish but never truly die? The official narrative that the Church swiftly and decisively eliminated a corrupted order conceals a far more complex reality. The true story involves political calculation, hidden alliances, and perhaps most intriguingly, secrets too valuable to be allowed to perish in flame. To understand how the Templars survived the Church's wrath, we must look beyond the dramatic arrests and executions to examine the hidden currents that allowed this enigmatic order to endure. The Vatican and French crown's fundamental miscalculation lay in underestimating the sheer scale and complexity of the Templar organization. By 1307, nearly 2 centuries after their founding, the Knights Templar had evolved from 9 poor knights protecting pilgrims into a multinational entity whose reach extended to every corner of Christendom and beyond. The order's visible presence was impressive enough. Over 1,000 commanderies and preceptories scattered across Europe and the Holy Land. From England to Cyprus, from Scandinavia to Sicily, Templar crosses marked the landscape. These were not merely military outposts but administrative centers managing vast agricultural estates, vineyards, mills, and forests. In England alone, Templars controlled over 120 properties. In France, the Paris Temple served as the national treasury. In Spain and Portugal, Templars held strategic fortresses crucial to the Reconquista against Muslim forces. Yet this visible infrastructure represented merely the surface of Templar power. Beneath lay intricate networks nearly invisible to royal and papal authorities. The Templars had pioneered international banking centuries before the famous Italian banking houses emerged. A pilgrim could deposit gold in London and withdraw funds in Jerusalem using a coded letter of credit, a revolutionary system that created the first truly international financial network in medieval Europe. This financial web extended beyond Christian territories. Templar representatives maintained discreet contacts with Jewish banking houses and Muslim traders. Documents discovered in Siena in the 1980s revealed Templar-managed trade agreements with Egyptian merchants dating to 1250, a time when such contact was explicitly forbidden by papal decree. These connections, hidden from church authorities, proved invaluable when the order faced extinction. The Templars' maritime capabilities further complicated attempts at eradication. The order maintained a substantial Mediterranean fleet operating from ports in southern France, Italy, and Cyprus. These vessels, flying nondescript banners when necessary, enabled Templars to transport personnel, documents, and treasures beyond reach of French or papal authorities. Naval historians have identified at least 17 Templar ships that vanished from Mediterranean shipping records immediately following the 1307 arrests, only to reappear years later under different ownership in Portuguese and Scottish ports. Perhaps most significantly, the Templars had developed an early form of encrypted communication. Documents recovered from the commandery at Villeneuve-du-Temple revealed a sophisticated alphanumeric substitution cipher used for sensitive correspondence. This encryption system, combined with a network of loyal couriers, allowed Templar leaders to coordinate responses even as the suppression began. Evidence suggests warning messages reached commanderies in England, Germany, and Spain days before local authorities moved to execute arrest orders. The order's structural resilience became evident as Philip's forces seized Templar holdings. While the king's men captured impressive stone preceptories and commanderies, they discovered that crucial documents, portable valuables, and many Templar knights themselves had vanished. The headquarters of the Templar fleet at La Rochelle was found completely abandoned, its harbor empty of ships, when royal officials arrived to execute arrests. This pattern repeated across Europe. The visible Templar infrastructure fell easily into church and crown hands. But the human network, the knights themselves, their knowledge, and their portable wealth, proved remarkably elusive. As one frustrated report from a royal bailiff in Normandy lamented, "We have seized the nest, but the birds have flown." Church officials similarly discovered that Templar financial records were incomplete or encoded. The vast Paris temple treasury yielded far less gold than anticipated. Templars had been moving assets through their banking network for months before the arrests, dispersing their wealth beyond the reach of confiscation. Modern economic historians estimate that Philip captured less than 1/3 of Templar liquid assets in France. The lesson became clear. An organization that had mastered international finance, maritime transport, encrypted communication, and maintained properties across multiple kingdoms could not be eradicated through conventional means. The church and French crown could seize buildings and land, but the invisible Templar network, its personnel, knowledge, and many of its resources, slipped through their fingers like water. While King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V orchestrated the Templar suppression, they faced a diplomatic reality that limited their power. Medieval Europe was not a unified entity, but a patchwork of kingdoms, principalities, and duchies, each jealously guarding its sovereignty. Many rulers viewed the French papal alliance with suspicion, and the attack on the Templars as an unwelcome precedent that threatened their own authority. In England, King Edward II initially resisted implementing the papal orders against the Templars. Court records reveal his reluctance stemmed not merely from personal doubts about the accusations, but from constitutional concerns. Edward's delayed response allowed many English Templars to disappear into supportive noble households. When arrests finally occurred in January 1308, 3 months after the French raids, royal officials found less than half the known Templar knights in the kingdom. More tellingly, English interrogations were notably less brutal than their French counterparts, with torture only reluctantly applied after repeated papal insistence. Portugal's response proved even more consequential. King Dinas I, after a perfunctory investigation that produced no confessions, declared the Portuguese Templars innocent of all charges in 1308. Recognizing the order's strategic importance in the ongoing conflict with Moorish forces, Dinas negotiated directly with the Pope to create a solution that satisfied Rome while preserving Templar capabilities. The result was the Order of Christ, established in 1319, which absorbed virtually all Portuguese Templar personnel and properties intact. This new order maintained Templar symbols, organizational structure, and even leadership, effectively the same organization under a different name. Prince Henry the Navigator later became Grand Master of this Order of Christ, using its resources to finance Portugal's Age of Discovery. The distinctive red cross on Portuguese ships exploring Africa and the New World, including those commanded by Vasco da Gama, derived directly from Templar iconography, representing an unbroken lineage. In Scotland, the situation developed differently, but with similar results. King Robert the Bruce, excommunicated for his rebellion against English authority, had little incentive to enforce papal bulls. Contemporary chronicles and the later Templar legends suggest Bruce welcomed Templar knights fleeing France, integrating them into his forces before his decisive victory at Bannockburn in 1314. While direct evidence remains circumstantial, several prominent families in Bruce's Scotland, particularly the St. Clairs of Rosslyn, suddenly gained wealth and showed architectural influences connected to Templar traditions. Aragonese records provide perhaps the most transparent example of royal protection. When Pope Clement V demanded Templar arrests, King James II of Aragon besieged the major Templar fortresses at Miravet and Monzon, not to capture them, but to protect the knights inside from papal inquisitors. These sieges, deliberately prolonged for over a year, allowed time for negotiations that ultimately saved most Aragonese Templars from torture and execution. Many were eventually absorbed into the Order of Montesa, another Templar successor organization. Beyond formal royal protection, local nobility throughout Europe provided crucial sanctuary. The Templars had spent generations cultivating relationships with aristocratic families, many of which had sons, brothers, or cousins within the order. These blood connections translated into safe houses and disguised identities for knights fleeing persecution. In southern France, tax records from 1310 to 1320 show dozens of new estate managers with military experience appearing on noble properties, individuals whose backgrounds cannot be traced before 1307 and who often bore names suspiciously similar to known Templars. German territories offered particularly effective refuge. The decentralized nature of the Holy Roman Empire, with its patchwork of semi-autonomous principalities, created numerous jurisdictional barriers to papal authority. The Archbishop of Mainz, conducting the official investigation of German Templars, declared all accused knights innocent in 1311, after a church council at which Templars were permitted to defend themselves, a courtesy denied their French brothers. Emperor Henry VII, engaged in his own power struggles with the papacy, made only token efforts to enforce the dissolution. Perhaps most surprisingly, Italy, the Pope's traditional power base, proved inconsistent in Templar suppression. Venice, fiercely independent and reliant on international trade networks the Templars had helped establish, largely ignored the papal bulls. Venetian records from 1313 document retired military men of French origin receiving commercial licenses and naval commissions, thinly disguised employment for Templar knights with maritime expertise. These varied responses across Europe created a patchwork of sanctuary and adaptation rather than uniform destruction. The Templars, as an international organization, were able to leverage these political divisions, transforming from a centralized order into a diaspora that survived under various guises, protected by monarchs and nobles who valued their skills, shared their secrets, or simply resented French and papal overreach. Beyond political protection and organizational resilience lay perhaps the most intriguing reason for Templar survival. The order possessed knowledge that made its complete destruction unthinkable to certain powerful interests within medieval society. During their 2 centuries in the East, Templars had accumulated scientific, architectural, navigational, and esoteric knowledge unavailable elsewhere in Europe. The Knights' extended presence in the Holy Land and their unusual level of interaction with Islamic and Jewish scholars provided access to classical Greek texts preserved by Arab translators but lost to Western Christendom. Inventories from Templar preceptories reveal collections of mathematical and astronomical works from Alexandria, Damascus, and Baghdad, including early versions of Euclid and Ptolemy that wouldn't become widely available in Europe until the Renaissance. This mathematical knowledge manifested most visibly in Templar architecture. Their distinctive round churches, modeled after Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre, incorporated principles of sacred geometry preserved in Eastern traditions. The octagonal structures, precise proportional relationships, and astronomical alignments seen in buildings like London's Temple Church or the Convento do Cristo in Tomar, Portugal, demonstrate geometric understanding beyond contemporary Western architecture. More controversially, evidence suggests Templars encountered and preserved elements of Jewish mystical traditions, particularly early Kabbalistic teachings developing in 13th century Spain and Provence. The layout of several Templar preceptories mirrors the structure of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, particularly at Chateau de Gisors in Normandy. Templar scholar Malcolm Barber has identified specific symbolic carvings at Gisors that combine Christian imagery with Hebrew letters in patterns consistent with Kabbalistic meditation practices. The infamous Baphomet, the mysterious head Templars were accused of worshipping, remains the subject of scholarly debate. While the name likely derives from a medieval corruption of Muhammad, some historians suggest it represented not Islamic influence, but rather a encoded reference to the Atbash cipher used in Hebrew mystical texts. When decoded through this cipher, the letters in Baphomet transform into Sophia, Greek for wisdom, and a central concept in Gnostic traditions. These esoteric elements made Templars valuable to several medieval power groups. University scholars at Oxford, Paris, and Bologna maintained discrete connections with Templar-educated individuals, viewing them as sources for otherwise inaccessible Eastern knowledge. Records from the University of Paris document several special lecturers in mathematics and astronomy appearing shortly after 1307, teaching advanced concepts previously unknown in Western academia. More pragmatically, Templar knowledge of navigation, cartography, and astronomy proved invaluable to emerging maritime powers. Portuguese records explicitly acknowledge Templar-trained navigators contributing to Henry the Navigator's cartographic school at Sagres, which enabled Portugal's Age of Discovery. The distinctive stellar navigation techniques used by early Portuguese explorers show remarkable similarities to astronomical knowledge found in Templar astronomical manuscripts preserved in the Vatican's secret archives. Royal protection of Templars often corresponded directly with rulers' interest in these knowledge domains. Emperor Frederick II, though predating the suppression, had welcomed Templar scholars to his intellectually vibrant court at Palermo, establishing a pattern of royal patronage for their specialized knowledge. After 1307, several European courts suddenly gained advisors with expertise in areas where Templars excelled, particularly military engineering, hydraulics, and treasury management. Some noble families appear to have sheltered Templars specifically to access their architectural expertise. The sudden flourishing of advanced Gothic architectural elements in remote Scottish noble properties, most famously at Rosslyn Chapel, suggests the influence of Mason Knights bringing continental techniques to new sanctuaries. Rosslyn's extraordinary carvings include New World plants like maize and aloe centuries before Columbus, fueling speculation about Templar knowledge of transatlantic routes. Perhaps most significantly for their survival, Templars had developed sophisticated financial and organizational systems valuable to emerging nation-states. Their banking practices, record-keeping methods, and administrative structures were centuries ahead of their time. As medieval kingdoms evolved toward more centralized governance, rulers found these Templar systems invaluable. The English Exchequer adopted numerous Templar accounting innovations, while French royal administrators eventually implemented organizational methods suspiciously similar to those used in Templar preceptories. This knowledge, scientific, architectural, navigational, financial, and esoteric, created a compelling incentive for powerful interests to ensure the Templars' expertise survived even as the formal order was dissolved. As medieval historian Anne Gilmore Bryson observed, "One does not burn the library to spite the librarian." For many medieval elites, Templar knowledge represented an irreplaceable resource too valuable to sacrifice on the altar of papal politics. The Knights Templar achieved something remarkable in the centuries following their supposed destruction. They transformed from a suppressed religious military order into a powerful cultural symbol and organizational template that repeatedly resurfaced in European history. This metamorphosis, from concrete institution to archetypal pattern, ensured their survival in ways perhaps more significant than the physical continuation of their lineage. By the early 17th century, distinct traces of Templar influence emerged within nascent Freemasonry. While claims of direct organizational continuity remain disputed among historians, the symbolic parallels are undeniable. Masonic rituals, particularly the third degree relating to Hiram Abiff, echo elements of Templar initiation accounts described in the interrogation records. The emphasis on Solomon's Temple, architectural symbolism, and ritualized progression through degrees mirrors Templar organizational patterns. More explicitly, 18th century Freemasonry developed specific Templar degrees within its Scottish Rite and York Rite systems. These higher degrees directly incorporated Templar symbols, legends, and claimed to preserve secret knowledge from the original order. The persistence of these Templar elements within Masonic tradition suggests either direct transmission of Templar elements or deliberate adoption of their mystique by Enlightenment-era fraternal organizations. The Templar resurgence gained particular momentum in Germany through the strict observance Masonic system established by Baron von Hund around 1751. Von Hund claimed direct initiation by unknown superiors, alleged Templar survivors who had maintained an unbroken tradition. While his claims faced skepticism even in his lifetime, the strict observance spread rapidly across Germanic territories and into France, becoming the dominant Masonic system in continental Europe for several decades. What makes the strict observance historically significant is its influence on European nobility. Its membership included princes, dukes, and future monarchs, creating a shadow network of Templar enthusiasts in positions of genuine political power. Frederick the Great of Prussia, though skeptical of von Hund's specific lineage claims, nevertheless protected and encouraged this Neo-Templar movement within his territories. Concurrently, the Templar legacy found expression through Rosicrucianism, a movement emerging from mysterious manifestos published in Germany between 1614 and 1616. These texts described a secret brotherhood preserving ancient wisdom while working anonymously to guide European civilization. Though not explicitly claiming Templar origins, Rosicrucian symbolism incorporated elements identical to those found in Templar contexts: the rose and cross, specific geometric configurations, and emphasis on architectural metaphors for spiritual development. The French Revolution and Napoleonic era brought another wave of Templar revivalism. Documents from revolutionary Paris reveal several political clubs with organizational structures and symbolism derived from Templar traditions. More significantly, Napoleon's Egyptian campaign included scholars specifically tasked with searching for Templar archives rumored to have been transported to Egypt during the suppression. Napoleon's personal library contained multiple works on Templar history, and his legal reforms implemented aspects of the Universal Legal Code Templars had developed for administering their geographically dispersed properties. In 19th century Britain, renewed archaeological and historical interest in the Templars coincided with the formation of Neo-Templar orders that continue to this day. The modern Knights Templar, established as a Masonic body, but later developing independent branches, grew into an international organization claiming spiritual, if not organizational, descent from the medieval order. These Victorian-era revivals constructed elaborate initiation rituals based on medieval accounts and acquired original Templar properties when possible. Beyond these formal organizations, the Templar legacy inspired a distinctive pattern in European esotericism, one emphasizing hidden knowledge preserved through secret lineages outside conventional religious authority. This Templar paradigm influenced movements as diverse as Martinism, Theosophy, and even aspects of Golden Dawn ceremonial magic. The concept of an underground tradition preserving ancient wisdom became a recurring motif in Western esoteric thought. More subtly, Templar banking innovations resurfaced in Swiss banking practices. Switzerland's banking secrecy laws, formalized in 1934 but rooted in much older traditions, bear remarkable similarities to Templar financial confidentiality practices. Several early Swiss banking families maintained traditions connecting their founders to Templar refugees who brought financial expertise to Alpine valleys following the suppression. The Templar architectural tradition likewise persisted through guild structures. The sudden appearance of advanced architectural techniques in Switzerland's Berner Oberland region after 1307 coincides with historical records of foreign master masons settling in these remote valleys. The distinctive rose windows and octagonal design elements that characterize churches in this region show clear Templar influence, suggesting a direct transmission of architectural knowledge. These varied manifestations, Masonic, Rosicrucian, revolutionary, and financial, demonstrate how the Templars achieved survival not merely as individuals or hidden lineages, but as a template for organization and a symbol of secret knowledge preserved outside institutional authority. Like a cultural virus, Templar patterns continuously found new host organizations through which their distinctive organizational DNA could express itself across centuries. As 19th century Masonic historian Albert Pike observed, the Templars perished, but their spirit lived. Their secret doctrines, their political aspirations, and their organization did not die with Jacques de Molay. In this sense, the Church's failure to eradicate the Templars was complete. Not only did individuals and knowledge escape the suppression, but the order achieved a kind of immortality by becoming an archetype that continuously regenerates itself in new historical contexts. As Jacques de Molay's flesh turned to ash on his execution pyre in March 1314, the Grand Master reportedly uttered a final defiant prophecy. He summoned both King Philip and Pope Clement to join him before God's judgment within the year. When both men died within months, Clement in April and Philip in November, it seemed to many contemporary observers that Templar power reached beyond death itself. This incident encapsulates the ultimate failure of the Church's campaign against the Templars. While buildings could be seized, knights imprisoned, and the visible order dissolved, the essence of Templar power, their knowledge, networks, and mystique, proved impossible to eradicate. In many ways, the suppression backfired spectacularly, transforming a concrete institution into something far more resilient. A legend, a symbol, and a pattern that would repeatedly resurface throughout European history. The Church and French crown succeeded in destroying the Templars as a formal institution, but this victory proved hollow. What they failed to understand was that the Templars had evolved beyond a mere religious military order into a complex organism with many interlinked dimensions: financial, intellectual, architectural, and esoteric. Like cutting a starfish, the violent suppression merely scattered fragments that regenerated in new forms across Europe. Historically, we can trace direct Templar survival through the Order of Christ in Portugal, which maintained Templar personnel, properties, and practices under thin disguise. We see their organizational DNA in Scottish noble families who suddenly displayed Templar knowledge and symbols. We find their distinctive architectural and mathematical knowledge resurfacing in unexpected locations across Europe. These represent not mere influence but direct continuation, the biological survival of Templar lineages and knowledge. Yet the more profound survival occurred mimetically, through the persistence and evolution of Templar ideas, symbols, and organizational patterns. When Freemasonry emerged into historical visibility in the 17th century, it carried distinct Templar elements. When Enlightenment secret societies developed in the 18th century, they frequently adopted Templar structures and symbols. When revolutionary movements challenged established authority in the 18th and 19th centuries, they often drew inspiration from Templar resistance to papal and royal power. This symbolic afterlife granted the Templars a kind of immortality more significant than mere organizational continuity. They became a persistent cultural archetype, representing initiation into hidden knowledge, resistance to corrupt authority, and the preservation of ancient wisdom. This archetypal power continues to resonate in contemporary culture through literature, film, and popular fascination with Templar mysteries. The irony is profound. Had Pope Clement simply reformed the order rather than attempting to destroy it, the Templars might eventually have faded into historical obscurity like many other medieval institutions. The very violence of the suppression created the mystique that ensured Templar survival in cultural memory. The secrecy forced upon Templar survivors generated the aura of mystery that made their legacy so compelling to subsequent generations. What lessons might we draw from this remarkable story of survival against overwhelming odds? Perhaps the most significant is the resilience of knowledge and human networks against institutional power. The combined might of the Catholic Church and French monarchy, the greatest powers of medieval Europe, proved insufficient to eradicate an organization whose true strength lay not in its visible infrastructure, but in its human capital and intellectual property. As we reflect on the Templar legacy, we might reconsider the traditional narrative of their destruction. Were the Templars truly defeated, or did they simply go underground to rise again later? The historical evidence suggests the latter. The dissolution of 1312 represents not an ending, but a transformation. The moment when the Templars shed their visible institutional form to become something potentially more powerful. A distributed network preserving and transmitting their knowledge across centuries. In this light, we might view the modern fascination with Templar mysteries not as mere conspiracy theorizing, but as the recognition of an historical truth. Some flames cannot be extinguished, but merely driven underground, where they continue to burn beyond the reach of those who would stamp them out. The Templar legacy represents one such inextinguishable flame, a tradition of knowledge, resistance, and mystery that continues to illuminate the hidden corridors of Western history. In the end, the Church did not fail to destroy the Templars because of insufficient power or commitment. It failed because it misunderstood the nature of what it was fighting. The order had evolved beyond a mere organization into a complex memeplex of knowledge, practices, and networks that could survive the destruction of its visible form. In attempting to eradicate the Templars, the Church instead ensured their immortality, transforming them from mortal men into an undying legend that continues to shape our world today.